Hi, I'm Jane Meredith, and I'm here today to talk to Ravyn Stanfield, who has got a beautiful essay in this Magic of the Pearl Pentacle book. In fact, the final essay on the knowledge point. Uh, so, my name's Jane Meredith, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm calling Ravyn today from Durrag and Gundungurra lands, which is west of Sydney in Australia. Thanks for coming on, Ravyn.
Thanks, Jane Meredith. I'm Ravyn Stanfield. My pronouns are she and they, and I am calling from the land of the Kalapuya, Cathlamet, Multnomah, and many of the tribes shared the language Chinookan.
Hmm. Well, thanks so much for being here, and thanks for writing your beautiful essay, kind of end piece to this book. And to start with, I'd love to ask you what Pearl Pentacle means to you, what it has meant to you, what like resonance it has for you in your work or your body or your imagination. What's the Pearl Pentacle mean to you?
Well, I think I'll start by saying human community is difficult. uh, And I feel like the Pearl Pentacle is a bit of a recipe that kind of holds maybe our collective heart in ways that if we're really struggling in relationship, what can we come back to? What kind of values can we agree on? And maybe how can we find our way through these difficulties that show up in communities when we don't agree, um, or when we don't like each other's behavior. So I guess I think about it more as, um, a guidebook in a way, a recipe for how the heck do we get along with each other and stay in communities close to the earth. How do we find our way back?
So, of course, I'm curious to ask, has this worked for you?
Well, it's always a work in progress with humans and relationships, isn't it? But I would say, with fascism having its day again in the world, some places it's never left. I think that our abilities to build coalitions, to figure out our ways through smaller conflicts so that we can build strong bases from which to really fight for the things that matter, our planet, vulnerable folks that are affected most by fascism and, so many of the other things that are under threat right now. We need love, law, knowledge, liberty, and wisdom.
Hmm. Yeah, we definitely do. Now, in your essay, which Theo and I did ask you specifically to write not just about knowledge, the knowledge point, but to write about initiation within that context of the knowledge point. And this is something that I really love about knowledge, or the way that I hold it, is that knowledge to me is something that once you've got it, you can't go back. Like you can't unknow it. It changes
Yeah.
me forever. To me, knowledge is not just a piece of information, but something that as I understand it, as I learn it, as I receive it, I am changed by that. Um, and I think of initiation very much that way. So I'd love it if you could reflect to us about how this lands for you, writing about or working with initiation specifically in that knowledge point of the Pearl Pentacle.
Yeah, it was an interesting challenge, right? It was sort of like, oh, it's not just knowledge, it's this particular kind of knowing that comes after you've been through something. So I think about initiation as a symbolic or real death and rebirth, a large transformative experience that really takes us from some kind of innocence, some kind of before through a threshold to a very different afterward. And yes, I think that knowing or knowledge often, if not always, comes with moving through that threshold, over that threshold, through that portal, however we're thinking about an initiatory experience. I think if we're talking about more traditional kinds of initiations, First Nations or spiritual tradition initiations, um, they are very thoughtful. And often the knowledge that comes afterwards can be receiving a new name for oneself, or receiving information that is sacred to the people who are initiating you, that you didn't know before and you can only receive after initiation. So I think that's the kind of knowing that I think about, that comes through that initiation experience.
Yeah, I'm thinking as you're speaking also about the kind of rites of passage, where one moves from one stage of life to the next. And although, of course, we always remember and carry that earlier self within us, like we are not any longer in that stage of life. Like if it's been a successful initiation, if it's been convincing, if we've been accepted and done it, we are somewhere else. We are someone else, a different version of ourselves.
Yeah. And I think, we can think about that in terms of something, very common, like a wedding or parenthood, where you won't be the same on the other end. You have a different role, you have different knowledge than you did beforehand.
Mm. Mm. You've written quite a personal essay, which is what I love and probably what I asked for and pushed for. Uh, and so I'm wondering, like, what initiations you might feel, or one initiation you might feel like you've received from the Pearl Pentacle itself. Maybe not in the knowledge point, but what's maybe an initiation that Pearl has offered you in your years of working with it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Um, I would really say in some ways it hasn't been just one moment of, stepping over one threshold, but I would say coming to my work as a healer, some people don't like that word. I really like the word heal, means to make whole. So it really works for me. And whether it was studying to be an acupuncturist or studying to be a therapist, or the different kinds of relational work and mediation that I've learned to do in community, there's really been something about needing to face my own vulnerabilities, sometimes faults, and really look at myself, my shadows, go through my own healing process to be able to stand on the other side and hold that space for other people. And while it's been both really beautiful and then sometimes full of grief, because healing experiences are not always delightful while you're in them. But I would say, the Pearl Pentacle really helped guide me in a lot of those moments of, like, what does deep, deep love ask of me? What does it mean to follow laws that are really meaningful to me, to us in community, as opposed to laws that seem arbitrary or oppressive, that don't make sense to us in
Mm.
community. So I would say, and again, the knowledge and the wisdom, and the unbinding, the liberty, I think that were created through many of those tiny initiations inside that big process. I think the Pearl Pentacle was definitely a guide for me, whether conscious or unconscious.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, and that's a beautiful piece of this work and doing this type of magic over many years, I guess, is that it becomes part of like our backbone, our substrata, something that we're bringing even when we're not like consciously, oh, let me bring the Pearl Pentacle here. It's just kind of coming with us and within us.
Yeah, and I think, look, it feels like, love is something in our dominant culture that's very flowery and romantic and kind of sugary. And I think the love that we're talking about in the Pearl Pentacle, because it's based in iron, is strong and really asks us, I think, to be open open to it flowing through us,
Mm.
and sometimes a bit fierce in really asking ourselves to choose love
Mm.
in the things that we're doing, and in trying to hold that in relationship to other people. And I think it goes far beyond a romantic attraction. It's about friendship, it's about community, it's about our deep devotion to the planet, and so
Yeah,
many different kinds of love.
I think it's the
Right.
force of the cosmos, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's so interesting that we've begun this talking about knowledge, and we've moved into talking about love, because the fourth question that I plan to ask you, which I'm still going to ask you, is, well, here we are talking about love. And when you run the Pearl Pentacle the way that we have run it in this book, which is one of several ways to run it, which is through the pentacle, uh, with knowledge in this particular position, then knowledge is the gateway back
Yeah.
to love as the start point, but also presumably as a deeper level, the next level of pearl, the next kind of layer over the grit that is forming, that is starting, that had started this pearl, inspired this pearl to start forming. So, yeah, I'd love you to offer any reflections you have on that knowledge and or initiation being the gateway through or back to this more robust love that you're speaking of.
Yeah. I think in so many ways, and I talked about this a little bit in the essay, but I feel like in a lot of movies or fantasy books, there's and certainly in true initiation traditions, there's this way that you go through initiation and you learn the secrets, and often there is a way of learning the secret name of something, right? And so I think, when I was a child, and probably even now, it's just like, oh, what's the secret name of the wind, or what's the secret name of this tree, or what's my secret name? And it's just such a delightful, like whimsical concept in so many ways, to want to know the secret names of things and people. But in some ways, for me, it's like, but that is love, right? To know something well enough to be able to discover every layer of it, even perhaps the secret name at its core that maybe is only for you, or maybe is only for those that, whatever you're interacting with wants to have. And in so many ways, it's like, if you know me at that core, deep, central level, then that is love.
Mm.
And being willing to know ourselves and others and the world in that way, I think, can only come from that curiosity that love brings.
Yeah, it's really love as action and as a verb and as a happening, rather than this kind of concept, which, as you said, is sometimes a little flowery and ethereal, how it's presented to us. I'm
Yeah.
just going to read out, because I love it, the opening paragraph of your essay that you contributed here. And I'm doing this. I mean, I hope you enjoy it, Ravyn, but really I'm doing this for you, watching or listening to this, so that you can like be drawn in, hopefully, into the intrigue and exploration of what is within this essay, and in fact within this whole book. I want you to imagine you are in the forest when they come to take you. You have studied, you have memorized, you have prepared. You know something will happen next, but the only instructions they gave you were to come to the edge of the forest and wait. You lift your chin and stare into the darkness, defiant, in case anyone is watching you. Inside, you shiver. What will this initiation be like? How will it change me? Thanks for writing that, Ravyn.
Thanks for reading to me. I love to be read.
Oh, well, anytime. Thanks so much for showing up. Is there anything else that you would like to add about the Pearl Pentacle, the book, how exciting it is to have it in your hands? Anything else?
Well, all of it. I mean, I think, like we were saying earlier, it's so delightful to be a contributor and to contribute a piece, and then to see where it fits in the entire pearl matrix of love and all the rest is just really delightful. So thanks for um, creating this beautiful work.
Great. Thanks for talking with me. And
Absolutely.
everybody watching, we'd love you, of course, to read the book, find the book, and let us know how you go with it. Okay, thanks, Ravyn.